Hi.
Laura.
Hi, everybody.
Good to see you
Good
again.
to see you too.
Great. So I'll do a quick introduction and we can get into the Q&A. So over the course of her career, Kara has been both a founder and leader of 6 breakthrough tech companies. As the founder and managing partner of Brilliant Ventures, she launched one of the few women-led venture firms and invested in transformative commerce companies, including Parachute Home and Happy Returns. You may know Brud for the hero Lil Miquela, a virtual pop star with more than 4 million followers across social platforms like Instagram and TikTok. Miquela is loved for her unique fashion style, progressive views, and as I've recently discovered myself and became obsessed with her music, and Brud is the company behind Miquela. They're leveraging robot artists, creative minds, and boundary-pushing technologies to build a radical, intelligent, and accessible entertainment company for a new generation. So Kara, could you briefly introduce yourself, Brud, and the problems that Brud solves for brands?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed hearing Arthur talk about Cameo. I'm a big fan of them. And it's really interesting to think about how a lot of what he was talking about, democratization of access and the idea of sort of dialogue between celebrities and their fans actually is a great segue, I think. So as you mentioned, I'm the president of Brud, the next generation entertainment company behind the virtual artist Lil Miquela. And this is Brud is actually now the 7th company where I've been a founder or leader, and 4 of those have exited via IPO or acquisition. So I've been in this space for a very long time and seen a lot of things. Prior to Brud, as you mentioned, I was at Brilliant Ventures. We did invest exclusively in e-commerce companies led by brilliant, diverse leadership teams. You mentioned a couple of them. Others include Tamara Mellon, Skylar, Harper Wilde, Hotijab. And my transition from working day to day, with e-commerce companies to Brud is testament to how much I believe in the power of virtual characters to shift the face of brand loyalty and affinity in an ever more complicated media and commerce landscape. Brud was founded in 2017 to tell stories and champion ideas. We leveraged, as you mentioned, cultural insights, creative minds, and boundary-pushing technologies to develop fully realized virtual characters who connect with their audiences, and that's a very key phrase, as they entertain and inspire. The business is that we build large global audiences and cultivate passionate fandom for those characters, particularly among Gen Z. We are then able to sell joy to those fans and mass attention to aligned brands, including Samsung, Burberry, YouTube, Prada, many more. And we are able to deliver IP-driven entertainment in the form of music, TV, video, film, audio, podcasts, et cetera. The company is venture-backed by investors including Sequoia, Spark Capital, Liontree, Homebrew, and a slew of other interesting folks. And it's been the most fun adventure of my career. I feel incredibly lucky to be part of it.
Great, thank you. And Kara actually sent me a great video of Lil Miquela yesterday. So let me just quickly play that. Let me share my screen. Great. Do you see the video? Cool. Okay.
You never say how you really feel. How can I know if this thing is real? Is it all in my head? Am I making it up? Am I thinking too much? Why can't I just say it? Cause even if it's just in my mind, my heart is still hurting, so I know
I can heavily relate to anyone who's ever fell out of place.
Because you're a robot.
Tell me what you want, cause I've had enough. Stop saying what I wanna hear. If you're breaking my heart, do it sooner than later. Speak up, cause I can't keep this up. I need you. So tell me what you want, cause I've had enough. Stop saying what I wanna hear. If you're breaking my heart, do it sooner than later. Speak up.
What's up? It's Michaela here with YouTube Music at Coachella, and I'm joined by J Balvin.
What is your dream for the future?
For everyone to experience healing and safety.
Nick, tell everyone to go to the Brud YouTube and listen to your new song.
Go to the Brud YouTube and listen to my new song.
I made a brand new song just for my Michaelians, and I'm so excited to share it.
Cause I can't keep this up. I need you to tell me what you want, cause I've had enough. Stop saying what I wanna hear. If you're breaking my heart, do it sooner than later. Speak up.
And as always, don't forget to recharge your heart. Peace.
Great. That was a lot of fun. Thank you, Kara. So jumping into the first question, I guess for people who didn't know who Lil Miquela is, I bet they do now. So the first question is, obviously Lil Miquela is a virtual influencer. They're very new and intriguing for many consumers. What do they mean for brands? And how does Brud work with a brand? Maybe you could give us an example.
I'd be very happy to. And I also am wondering if I will ever stop nodding my head to that song or get the words out of my head. I've listened to Speak Up a lot, and it is a favorite. And I just realized that I was probably sitting here going like this the whole time you were. Hopefully, I wasn't on screen. So as far as how to think about Little Miquela and how it relates to brands and sort of the broader message for brands. A Silicon Valley philosopher named Chris Dixon, who's actually now a venture capitalist at Andreessen Horowitz, he once wrote that the next big thing always starts out being dismissed as a toy. And at first, people certainly dismissed Miquela exactly as that, a toy, a novelty, or an influencer. But we believe that winners enlist disruptive technologies, the ones that sneak by because people dismiss them as toys. At Brud, we are using technology to reinvent storytelling and celebrity, and no one has shown more interest in this than the world's top brands and agencies. Miquela, and I don't need to go through the whole background story, but briefly, she's hugely popular, and she's at the center of what we're doing. Time Magazine named her one of the most 25 most influential people on the internet. She was the only virtual character on that list. She has an incredibly engaged, huge audience. You mentioned for more than 4 million followers. She's modeled for Prada and Calvin Klein and Burberry and more. She's been on lots of magazine covers. She interviewed J Balvin at Coachella. And this year, her music career has really exploded with tens of millions of streams. You just heard Speak Up. Her most recent collaboration is with the incredible Tiana Taylor on their single Machine. Yeah. Do you like, is that the one that won you over?
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. It's a beautiful song. And she's also a social activist and a true change seeker who's using her large and growing platform to bring awareness and drive impact on behalf of marginalized communities and social justice. For example, she's been a very passionate advocate of the Black Lives Matter movement since her inception, which came, I think, slightly after the inception of the Black Lives Matter movement. And today, everyone from celebrities to brands to musicians to media outlets want to work with her. She's not just a toy. She's truly become a leading voice of her generation because she's not only speaking to her fans, she's connecting with them and reflecting and representing and inspiring them as she gets to know them. And so here's why all of that detail about who Miquela is matters for brands. We're in the midst of a massive shift in the relationship between consumers and brands, just as we're in the midst of massive shifts, tectonic shifts all around us in lots of ways. But because of that change that's happening, it's no longer enough for brands to have a strong tone of voice. Wendy's, which I think Arthur just mentioned as well, is really well known for having created this incredible voice with their Twitter account, right? And it's a fantastic TOV, or tone of voice. But that's ultimately a one-way messaging construct. Influencers represent kind of the ultimate in TOV. They generally represent a specific aesthetic or lifestyle that they project out onto the world. This one way talking at audiences versus with them. And that's no longer sufficient for brands to capture the loyalty and affinity they need. And it's really why we resist labeling Michaela as an influencer, because we think she's much more than that. The brand relationship with consumers needs to be a two-way street. Brands need to have a point of view and to be able to listen to their audiences as clearly as they message at them. And we've never seen this more clearly than during the protests and upheaval that followed George Floyd's senseless death. Brands came out making statements that rang hollow because they hadn't taken the time to build their stances out holistically, walking the walk as well as talking the talk previously. Michaela actually represents and can be part of the opportunity that brands have to make that shift from TOV to POV, from a one-way construct to expression of a point of view that's developed in conversation with audience. Combining Michaela's point of view, engaged dialogue with her audience with an aligned brand message is incredibly powerful. Michaela is a fully realized character. She's a pop star whose personal life is as compelling to her fans as her music, just like Ariana Grande's, with a clear and well-defined point of view. This is critical to brands because working with her eliminates the painful reality of unengaged followers versus loyal fans. When brand posts something and the brand has, say 10 million followers on Instagram, but only gets 10,000 likes on a post, that's a hollow ring there. Her engagement levels are extraordinarily and wildly exceed benchmarks. And one very specific example of this is what was featured at the end of our sizzle reel there, which is a partnership with Calvin Klein. They took advantage of Michaela's engagement in a campaign that she did with them with Bella Hadid. And that campaign not only blew through expectations of reaching 155 million people in the first week alone, but also engagement, garnering tons of attention from media and fans alike. So we don't think of Michaela as an influencer. We really think of her as becoming an iconic voice of her generation because she is able to reflect and represent what she's hearing from her audience. And that's a really unique place to sit.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Kara. And I think everyone who was just watching, who has seen Michaela, is impressed by how realistic she is, not only in her animation, but also in her voice, in her music, in her opinions. Just tell us a little bit about the technologies behind the making of Michaela.
Yeah, well, I can't pull back the curtain too much, but I will say that we have a really unique tech stack that allows emerging technologies to be applied in non-traditional ways, which ultimately allow for Michaela to remain very adaptive and dynamic. Our code has been developed ground up exclusively for virtually native production of characters for the internet and the metaverse, by which I mean gaming, social, AR. We have both artists and technologists in residence at Brud coming from every corner of the entertainment, technology, and media industries, which is, by the way, one of the coolest reasons, one of the best reasons about working there. It's such a diversity of experiences and perspectives. So people come from Hulu to IPsoft, Lionsgate to Google, Vice, Animatic Media, AOL to Spotify, and more. And we bring together those diverse perspectives and to ultimately create characters that can really reflect and inspire the culture. So each and every piece of Michaela's work, from the video for a hit single to a photo shoot, is a collective contribution of this team. And we're really proud at Brud to have created work that supports so many human careers.
That's awesome. And going back to a little bit about the premise of this conference, and the reason why we put together this conference, or part of the reason why, is because with the pandemic that's going on, e-commerce is really being transformed and being reimagined. And we have seen a lot of impact by the pandemic on brands. And we know that many luxury brands have traditionally, intentionally kept distribution offline for reasons like exclusivity. And so since Brud works with so many luxury brands, I just saw Michaela wearing a Paco Rabanne top that I absolutely love. could you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with, your brand partners? How are they adapting to this current environment?
Yeah, I mean, to have access to fit into Michaela's closet, my goodness. I was actually just talking about this with our partner, Gabe Walker, whose company Prevayer is a really key partner for us in working with brands. And, we don't know the long-term effects of COVID-19. I can pretend to know many things, but I certainly don't know that. But we do know that it will change the way that some and arguably the smartest brands create and commission content forever. We have not seen inbound opportunities from our luxury partners slow for Michaela over the last several months. If anything, luxury brands and designers have been more interested in ever than the opportunities afforded by virtual production and virtual models and characters. I would definitely say there's been a pause in the broader sense in the luxury sector, though, as many brands have simply not had access to their factories to continue to produce new items or and there's also been a pause because a lot of luxury brands, didn't necessarily have a complete and well thought out e-commerce strategy going into this moment. So it's a great time, and it's a absolutely critical time for luxury brands to take a step back and decide how they want to come out of this. Do they want to stick to what has worked in the past, or do they want to take the leap and dive into what's moving the needle going forward? Certain brands are exploring more within the virtual space, campaigns, events, and shows. A great example of this is Burberry launching a campaign featuring a CGI Kendall Jenner this month. And others are thinking about doing traditional runway shows in September. So it's case by case.
And we have a lot of brand executives and marketeers in the audience. What advice do you have for people who are, maybe just now starting to think about more and more digital engagement and more digital channels?
Yeah, I think it's very clear that it's no longer viable for any brand or retailer to be without a smartly designed e-commerce program. This pandemic took the last groups of internet holdouts and forced them all online for everything from news to buying groceries to going to school or purchasing luxury loungewear. E-commerce needs to be a top priority strategy going forward. It is no longer enough for it to support sort of the old school approach to bringing fashion, for example, to market. It needs to be the first thought. There's no choice.
Mm-hmm. And what about for people who have been used to, engaging with people on digital channels, but are now seeing more and more competition because everyone's going on to digital channels now? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think it's really tempting when you're thinking about e-commerce to really only focus on performance marketing, and that my least favorite phrase, growth hacking. But wise brands will invest more, not less right now, in programs and campaigns that enable them to more regularly, closely, and meaningfully connect with their audiences and customers. That's the investment that will add long-term value and ultimately drive sales. I mean, not even ultimately, immediately drive sales if it's done right. So I would say, people think e-commerce and they just go right into sort of performance marketing and thinking about that, cost per acquisition. And that is absolutely critically important. And trust me, as a VC, I hammered many, many, many entrepreneurs on those KPIs. But I think that even new small brands who have a very strong digital presence need to invest in those meaningful connections and engagement anchored by a strong, clear brand point of view that can be the leapfrog strategy that helps them win. Make that shift from TOV to POV. Make that investment in your brand, voice, story, and communication with your customers.
That's great. Thank you for your insights. And maybe quickly, one last question. What is next for Michaela? I know she's all about her music right now. What should we be watching out for going forward?
Yeah, I hope you can see the grin. There is a lot of really exciting stuff in the hopper. But because I know you are such a fan of her music, she is getting ready to release her next big single, and that's coming out very soon. And with it, a truly groundbreaking video, unlike anything that anyone has ever seen. And I was on a call with MTV yesterday telling them about it. And it's it's a mind-boggling virtually produced virtual video, and it is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So I know you'll watch it. I hope you all take a look, and would love to connect with anybody in the audience or anybody interested in learning more about thinking about virtual characters and the opportunity there for brands, because it is enormous.
That's great. I'll be keeping an eye out for that for sure. And for everyone who's watching, after the conference, we'll be sharing information on how to get connected with the speakers. And so please stay tuned for that. And with that, thank you very much, Carol, for spending time with us today. It was great to see you again, and great to hear your insights.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.